How to Survive in Japan. I am Aragawa, or you can call me Sensei. You are all here today because you'll be studying abroad in Japan next semester. But before you go, this is a 101 class on cultural and linguistic differences between America and Japan. Therefore, once you're done, you'll be able to avoid cultural misunderstanding. Can everyone give me a short introduction of themselves?
I am Yuki. I'm a first-year Japanese student at the University of Iowa.
I'm Haru, and I'm also a first-year Japanese student at the University of Iowa.
I can't wait to go to Japan. What are we going to talk about?
If you read the syllabus, you'd know. We're going to be talking about making requests, apologizing, and back channels.
Good. I see that some of you are ahead of the game. Since we got that covered, let's start the class. Being in a foreign country where there are many things that are mysterious and unknown to you. Eventually, you're going to need to make a request, ask for help, ask someone to help you to do something, get directions, and etc. But the way that you would make a request in Japanese is different than in English. Does anyone know the difference?
Compared to English, Japanese use more indirect language and hints when making a request.
So then, what would be considered direct and indirect language?
According to Rinard and Kobayashi, Japanese people have direct methods, conventionally indirect methods, and non-conventionally indirect methods for making requests. Direct language would be like, please show me the book. Conventionally indirect methods would be like, I would like to receive the favor of you showing me the book, if possible. And non-conventionally indirect is like, if you are possible to the point of having finished with the book yet.
Correct. So then, how would you make a polite request in America and Japan?
While the politeness of the request is based off the sincerity in English, the perceived politeness in a Japanese request depends mostly upon the formality level, where very formal is ranked the highest in politeness and informal is ranked as the lowest, according to Rinard and Kobayashi's article, Request of Hints in Japanese and English.
Very good. I'm glad that you've been doing the readings. So first, when making a request, use formal language to show your politeness. Using very formal language combined with non-conventionally indirect and direct methods is going to be politeness. Like the examples that Yuki gave earlier are all examples of very formal language, so any of the requests of that type would be the most polite. The second suggestion in regards to requests is based on the model presented by Wiseman, which decodes request of hints in terms of type and degree of opacity and categorizes them into two dimensions. The first dimension, propositional content of requests, which contains three categories. The first is 0, where there is no references to the here. The second is component, which is reference to some component of the requested act. And lastly, act, which is reference to the requested act. Does anyone know the second dimension?
The second dimension is an elocutionary device which contains four categories. 1. Zero or no statement of elocutionary intent. 2. Stating potential ground, giving a reason why the request is necessary. 3. Questioning feasibility, asking about some prerequisite for the request to be granted. And lastly, other, which is anything that doesn't fall into the previous categories.
Yes. Therefore, according to Rinard and Kobayashi, component is used the most often paired with zero expression of illusionary force, statement of grounder, or questioning feasibility. What are some examples of these requests?
Are there any batteries be an example?
Here is the mail.
The printer is running out of ink.
Those are all very good examples. Therefore, when making a request, it is preferable to avoid explicit expression as much as possible, as it could possibly create a negative impression of verbosity, directness, or aggressiveness. In addition, when trying to interpret these requests, remember that majority of are going to indirect requests where you have to guess what they're asking for. Let's take one of the requests that you had mentioned earlier and interpret what that means.
Can we take the printers running out of ink as an example? I don't understand how that is a request. It sounds more of like a statement to me.
So why I said that it was a request was because you're hinting for someone to replace the ink cartridge, but not directly asking anyone in specific to complete the task.
Yes, so many indirect requests that Japanese people make are going to be similar to the example that you gave earlier in class. Okay, if there are no more questions, that's all for day 1. See you next class. Topic 2, apologizing. Welcome back. You've made it past the first day in class, so we'll move on to apologizing. Apologizing is a pertinent element of Japanese culture to learn since it is used quite often.
How different could apologizing in Japan be from any other country?
I'm glad you asked. First off, the severity of the offense determines how you should apologize.
Isn't that the same thing found in English?
Yes and no. While in America, you may be more sincere with your apology depending on the situation. It is different in Japanese. In Japanese, you typically change the word used in your apology depending on the situation.
Why would you need to change the word that you use?
Words convey different levels of respect.
Exactly, Yuki. You wouldn't talk to people however you want in English. So you should take the same level of precaution in Japanese.
That sounds difficult to remember.
It may be at first, but it's quite simple after a while. If you remember the research article that was titled Norms of Apology Depicted in U.S., American and Japanese Literature on Manners and Etiquette, that we read by Sugimoto, you'd have words such as sunimasen, gomen, gomennasai, and moshiwake arimasen, which can be modified using words such as hotoni, or taihen, or makatoni. Though to have it make more sense, I'll have you two practice as I explain.
When do you use it and which one do you use?
That's a good question. If it's something minor like stepping on someone's foot or bumping into them, then you could use something such as sunimasen or gomen. If it's something severe like you lost someone's bag or broke something of theirs, then that would warrant using hotone gomennasai or moshiwake arimasen.
Well, what about taihen and makotoni? When would you use those?
In those instances, if you're using moshiwake arimasen and the situation is more serious, then you would use taihen and makatoni.
Okay, that makes sense. I also remember something about bowing. Can we go over that?
Sure. Bowing is much more simple. If you remember the reading by Ohashi, there are two predominant forms of bowing, the low bow and the deep bow. Additionally, you have a slight bow of the head as well. A head bow is best served for really minor situations like stepping on feet or something close to that or similar to that. A low bow for more serious situations and a deep bow for serious offenses.
What is the importance of bowing?
I'm glad you asked. Japanese culture and Asian culture in general has a concept of face which may be difficult to understand at first, especially for Westerners. Bowing can be considered a sign of respect and capitulation to the person you are apologizing to, since you have affected their face with your offense.
Face. Is that like their physical face?
Good guess, but no. It's something that's intangible. Yuki, why don't you take a guess at what it is?
Is it something like perception of the person by others?
It's really hard to define, but that's a pretty good answer. Face could be considered to be one's prestige, dignity, or honor. So the purpose of bowing in a way is to restore that person's face when you have damaged it.
Good thing you had us practice when you explained it. I never would have guessed that bowing could be such a complex topic.
Well, Haru, it is complex, but when you put it into practice, it becomes easier to understand. With this information, you'll find that things will be able to flow much smoother in your day-to-day interactions when you go to Japan. Oh, where has the time gone? Looks like that's the end of class. If you have no more questions, you're free to leave. Topic 3, Back Channel. Welcome, everyone. Today's the last day of class. Are you excited to be done and off to Japan? I'm pretty sure you guys want to quickly finish the class and head straight for Japan. But just hold on for a little longer. You'll be in Japan soon. For today, our last topic we will be discussing is back-channeling, which in Japanese is known as aizuchi. Now, does anyone know the purpose of aizuchi?
Oh, I do, Sensei. I remember reading an article by Saft on aizuchi, and it mentioned in the article that aizuchi is used by the listener to express their support, agreement, or encouragement.
That's right. And how about you, Haru?
I think in the article it was also mentioned that aizuchi can also function as a way of organizing talk. As mentioned in the article with the panelist, each time a panelist was speaking, the moderator used aizuchi to show that they are giving their full attention to the speaker and being respectful of their thoughts and comments.
And can you tell me what back-channeling is then?
Backchannel is describing a listener's behavior during verbal communication. Some common examples in the Japanese culture are head nodding, smiling, leaning, and laughing.
Correct. And why is it important to use aizuchi in the Japanese culture?
It's to let the speaker know that the listener is actively engaged in the conversation. And if you don't use aizuchi, it shows that the listener is not interested in the speaker's conversation and that they are very distant.
Very good. And if you noticed, there are two different strategies used in aizuchi, in which both focus on showing the speaker that they are actively listening, paying attention, and showing respect. The first strategy is the nonverbal strategy, which is what Yuki just mentioned. And then there is the verbal strategy. Haru, can you mention some verbal strategies in Japanese?
Absolutely. In class, I remember us listening to the interview of Abe Aki on YouTube, which only showed the verbal strategy and seemed to use the word hi quite often in response to the speaker's response. However, in another video that we watched, a clip with Kuroyanagi Tetsuoku and Kiki Kirin, we were able to see both nonverbal and verbal strategies being put into play. For instance, the words that were yeah, so desu ne, and oh, and the nonverbal strategies that were used were head nodding, smiling, leaning, and laughing as mentioned earlier.
Wow, good job, Haru, on remembering those details. What differences do you see with Aizuchi in the Japanese culture and American culture?
Both cultures seem to have the same function for Aizuchi. Both cultures have their own slight variation of expressing it. In the American culture, they use sarcasm and repeated words to lighten the atmosphere and show attention.
Good. Did you also notice that the Aizuchi words in Japanese have different levels and purposes? When you focus on the Japanese language, you can notice that there are certain words used depending on the status of the listener and speaker. While with the English, there is not much of a difference in the words used on people from different levels of status.
Word that can be used when interacting with people of different levels of status, while so desu is a response used in more formal setting and used when encountering someone of a higher level of status.
And also, looking at the English Aizuchi words, you can see that all the words can pretty much be used on people of all statuses. But it's more of the case where certain words just sound more appropriate than others.
That is very true. Okay, so now we'll be acting out a short scenario of two students who are discussing about the pros and cons of the evolution of technology that incorporates Aizuchi.
Looking at the world around us, it seems like technology is constantly changing and developing every day. And has made many changes affecting our life in every aspect.
Hi. I would agree with what you have said, and I definitely see a lot of changes occurring around the world.
Hi. You see that with technology advancement, our society has become more industrialized, efficient, and successful.
Yes.
Okay, I think we should end the acting here. As you were acting the scenario, did you notice something in the conversation? Or anything different or particular?
Is it that there was a moment when Haru basically spoke what he thought that Yuki would say?
Yes, that's exactly what I was looking for. Another thing to take note about Aizuchi in the Japanese culture is that there is something called active listening that plays an important role in Aizuchi, especially when two people that have a close relationship, they get to a point where they have a conversation and they're able to guess what each other would say. That was the last topic for the class. I hope that you all have learned more about the Japanese culture, and I hope that it clear up some of the cultural misunderstandings that could occur during your time in Japan. I hope that you have a safe journey and enjoy your experience in Japan.